MATER is one of her favorite characters within the Cars universe. His great charisma and loyalty make him a great friend whom everyone loves. But these characteristics also make him someone quite dangerous and sick. MATER fooled us all, and he's not the great friend he pretends to be. This character hides a rather disturbing secret. Could it be that we're actually loving a true psychopath? Why does he live with a bunch of car parts? Shouldn't this be like body parts? Get ready, friends, because after watching this video, you'll never look at MATER the same way. MATER's childhood and adolescence provide us with plenty of evidence to confirm this theory, including official sources like the Cars Wiki. We can deduce that MATER is a murderer from what little we know of his childhood, and we don't know a lot about what happened in this stage, but what is very clear is that he had a quite difficult life. He was always the target of ridicule by other children, and many times he was the victim of bullying, harassment, and abuse, not only from those who claimed to be his friends, but also from his own family members, especially with his cousin Booba being the main aggressor, who constantly and harshly abused him during most of his adolescence, a fact that we can verify in MATER's official biography. He can be extremely scared or skittish at times because of his sensitive nature and from being constantly and harshly abused by Booba in his past. But the thing that hurt MATER the most is that, despite his big heart, he never had a good friend or true companionship. The only people who hung out with him were the same ones who mistreated him. As he grew up and matured, MATER tried to forget all these bad memories and continue in search of that desired best friend. But his illusion would be completely destroyed. Due to MATER's low self-esteem, it was difficult for him to relate to others, which made them continue to make fun of him.
Fellas, listen, I know what you're going through. Everybody's been laughing at me my whole life too.
MATER just wanted to be understood and appreciated by someone, but these feelings would gradually disappear, awakening in MATER a new but very dark feeling. In the movie Cars, they present MATER as someone you can trust. He's friends with everyone and quite a fun car. He serves as a helper to transport cars that are stranded on the road. But the most interesting part of MATER's duties is the junkyard he has on his property, like tires and other rusty car parts. If we look at it from the movie's point of view, this doesn't sound as crazy as it seems. But if we think about something like this happening in our world, it would actually be quite sick if we think about it. MATER stores car parts that are no longer useful, which would be the same as if a person in our world stored parts of deceased people's bodies. Here, things start to get quite dark and very worrying. With all that said, we could conclude that MATER is actually a hitman who likes to keep and exhibit parts of his victims as trophies. But why? This may seem just like what Jeffrey Dahmer did. If we go back to little MATER's past, he was a tow truck that suffered a lot of violence and abuse, which led him to distort reality, as while he was a teenager, he just wanted to find a friend to trust. And in the cruelest way, MATER realized that he cannot trust just anyone, not even his own family. Having this great trauma of feeling lonely and abandoned, the best thing he could think of was to get a friend, but in a bad way. With this great charisma and fun attitude, it wouldn't be difficult at all for MATER to find someone to talk to. But the worst part would come when this someone realized how sick MATER is and wanted to get away from him. Realizing that situation, MATER would simply lose his mind, committing atrocious acts against these cars. And you can imagine to what extent I wanna get. All that bodywork and junk aren't just simply pieces of old cars. They are parts of all those cars that MATER took away their lives, so that they wouldn't leave them alone. In this way, they would always be accompanying him. And I know that many of you will say that they don't necessarily have to be parts of car bodies, since in the world of cars, tires seem like simple shoes or gloves, and they're not considered as a limb or any organ. But that's where MATER's true intelligence lies. Who could distrust someone who works with car parts? If you see meat and blood in a butcher shop, you would never think it's human meat, right? Or would you? And with all this, it's demonstrated that MATER is a true psychopath, and that clumsy and distracted attitude he sometimes has is just a simple mask to hide his true personality, details that are closely related to the word psychopath killer. Take for example the second movie of Cars. It is actually believed to be just MATER's imagination, because it was never mentioned later in the Cars history. It's just like another anecdote from MATER, like the ones he loves to tell his friends. But the fact that Cars 2 is one of the darkest and most sadistic movies from Pixar make us believe that MATER is actually sick in the head. In that movie we witness a lot of violence and even death to several cars. Most people will think that this theory sounds quite crazy, almost impossible to believe, right? But that's what MATER planned from the beginning. And if you need more evidence that MATER is actually a heartless monster, in his official biography we can also find that in his adolescence, MATER showed quite violent and destructive behaviors. He used to be a real problem within Radiator Springs. He played heavy pranks on everyone, flipped tractors, and said inappropriate things to mock others. Behavior that can be explained by all the abuse he suffered from everyone when he was a child. And if this is the case, his story could be related to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So in Cars, MATER would practically be like Leatherface. Just like MATER, the protagonist of the movie collected parts of his victims, and even made household items with all this. A story inspired by the atrocities committed by Ed Gein. This wouldn't be strange at all, since several of the events that happen in Cars were taken from events that happen in real life, like the wars, Queen Elizabeth, and the Pope Mobile. MATER's disturbed mind was completely destroyed when he met the Lightning McQueen. As we know, he was the first one to trust the Lightning McQueen and become his best friend. At that moment, MATER thought that he would finally have a friend to trust, but all his illusions would be shattered when McQueen had to return to the track. This leads us to the next theory. MATER was so mentally messed up that his subconscious had to imagine a whole life with Lightning McQueen, this to be able to be calm. In reality, MATER was never in the Piston Cup, nor he was a spy or astronaut as they show us in MATER's Tall Tales. All this was just a simple hallucination, and probably he's not even in Radiator Springs, but rather in a psychiatric hospital where he created all this story, including the story of a bunch of cars that can speak. And this joins the theory that Cars 3 ignores everything that happened in Cars 2, since it never existed except in MATER's mind. In Cars 3, no character from Cars 2 is mentioned. It doesn't feel like a possible continuation. But what if it's not just MATER who is crazy, but rather all of Radiator Springs? If we think about it, Radiator Springs is located in the middle of nowhere. It's a completely abandoned town and separated from society. Doesn't this sound familiar to you? In fact, this reminds us of what happened in the movie The Hills Have Eyes, which is based on a true story, where a group of people away from society turn out to be a clan of cannibals. And this can be confirmed by several of the deleted scenes from the first Cars movie, where the lightning arrives at Radiator Springs in the same way as the original movie. The difference being that when sentenced, the sheriff comments that he's gonna switch bodies with MATER, which are illegal and sick practices within the world of Cars.
What have you done to me? You put my engine in a steamroller?
You asked for community service, dummy.
You guys are nuts! This place is crazy!
But that's not the worst part, since in another deleted scene, MATER takes McQueen to a car cemetery. MATER is completely unfazed, while McQueen is terrified. So MATER now knows that now McQueen can never leave Radiator Springs anymore. And those scenes we saw where Lightning had gone missing were actually because he no longer had a life. It is even thought that MATER's huge teeth were deformed because he ate parts of the other cars, so they would always be with them and he would never be alone again. Undoubtedly, knowing all of this creates a whole existential crisis. How can such a beloved character by everyone actually be a monster within his universe? But don't let sadness overwhelm you, friends. Perhaps MATER is just a simple morgue assistant, and that's why there are all those car parts in his junkyard. Or as we said before, maybe they are not body parts and he's just a collector of shoes and gloves from old cars. Although you should think about this. What is the true meaning of his name? Take it as homework and leave your conclusions in the comments. Is MATER really the friend he claims to be, or he's a complete mental sick person who fooled us all? You have the final word. Leave your answers in the comments.